What's up, y'all? So today we're going to be talking about free speech and why free speech exists precisely to protect the views you despise. As Noam Chomsky, the great liberal philosopher, once said. And Facebook suspends Trump accounts for 2 more years. He was banned indefinitely from both sites, Facebook and Instagram, in January in the wake of posts he made on the U.S. Capitol riots. Last month, Facebook's oversight board criticized the open-ended penalty. Facebook said Mr. Trump's actions were a severe violation of our rules. Uh, and then they go on to say in this article, if we determine that there is still a serious risk to public safety, we will extend the restrictions for a set period of time and continue to reevaluate until that risk has receded. So, okay, a lot of issues with this. Number one, they're talking about him violating their guidelines, which I will concede he was tweeting some stuff he shouldn't have been tweeting. And you should just, delete those tweets, ban him for a day or two. To take him off the platform is completely unjustified. Twitter and Instagram and Facebook are the public square now, as many have said. And to ban someone from it is shutting down their ideas in the marketplace of ideas, which is the worst possible thing you could do, because then you're putting them on the fringe and they won't get met with any criticism. They can just become surrounded with this echo chamber of fringe ideas, and we're gonna become even more divided. So deplatforming people only creates more division and polarization. The other thing is they're talking about him. So they're talking about him, violating their guidelines, but you had all these other representatives, for example, Maxine Waters, tweeting like, stay in the streets, get more aggressive, like all this stuff. And there was never even a mention of them potentially being banned or held accountable for that. So there is no consistency here. The Ministry of Truth is pretty much just deciding who they want to speak and who they want to silence. So Noam Chomsky understood this really well, and this is a clip that's been around for a while, but I think it's worth watching again.
I do not think that the state ought to have the right to determine historical truth and to punish people who deviate from it. I'm not willing to give the state that right, even if they happen to. But are you denying that the gas chambers have a state? But I'm saying, if you believe in freedom of speech, you believe in freedom of speech for views you don't like. I mean, Goebbels was in favor of freedom of speech for views he liked, right? So was Stalin. If you're in favor of freedom of speech, that means you're in favor of freedom of speech precisely for views you despise. Otherwise, you're not in favor of freedom of speech. There's two positions you can have on freedom of speech, and you can decide which position you want. With regard to my defense of the utterly offensive, the people who express utterly offensive views, I have the slightest doubt that every commissar says, you're defending that person's views. No, I'm not. I'm defending his right to express them. The difference is crucial, and the difference has been understood outside of fascist circles since the 18th century.
Is there anything like objectivity, or scientific objectivity, reality? As a scientist,
look, I'm not saying I defend the views. If somebody publishes a scientific article, which I disagree with, I do not say the state ought to put him in jail. Right?
All right, but you don't have to support him right away and say, I support him just for the sake of everybody saying that whatever he wants to say.
Suppose this guy is taken to court and charged with falsification. Then I'm going to defend them, even if I disagree.
But he wasn't taken to court.
Oh, you're wrong.
But when did you write the support?
When he was.
So he's confronted by these students there in this clip who are like, hey, these guys are spreading Holocaust, misinformation. There's people out here saying the Holocaust didn't happen, and all this nonsense. Obviously it's nonsense. And the students are they're coming to Chomsky being like, well, why shouldn't we be able to silence these people? And Chomsky is making it very clear there's two positions you can have on freedom of speech. You're for it or you're against it. Freedom of speech exists precisely to defend those views that you despise. It's not, you don't get to pick and choose, who you like. As he said right there, Stalin and Goebbels were in favor of speech that they liked. But there was, that's a bad example to follow. So I really like Chomsky's breakdown of it here. And he also notes like this, the difference between hate speech and other speech is crucial to understand and has been understood outside of fascist circles for like centuries. It's, you know, pretty well established what the difference is there. And the Constitution lays it out very clearly. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise, therefore, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So, yeah, Trump might be out here tweeting stuff that's moronic. I don't agree with really anything he says. I'm a liberal. I'm a pretty far left person. Occasionally, I'll agree with Trump for the like, you know, he'll say what some virtue signaling thing, and I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe you're right. But for the most part, I think what he says is BS. But should he be allowed to be on Twitter, express his views? Absolutely. We need him to be in the marketplace of ideas because we need people to push back against it, and we need his supporters to be able to see that pushback and really kind of think about these ideas. That's at least better than, again, pushing them to the fringe and forcing them to just be stuck in this, you know, echo chamber with each other where all of their views are going to be validated and they're going to go even further down a rabbit hole. You know, everybody needs to be part of this collective conversation, including, you know, Trump supporters, QAnon believers, whatever. Like these are all American people. Just because they believe some conspiracy theories about, you know, politicians eating babies doesn't mean that they are not allowed to be true citizens and have their First Amendment rights. So the other point I wanted to make regarding this whole thing is like the reason that I'm sticking my neck out to even talk about this is because throughout history, crackdowns on freedom of speech have almost always been cracking down on anti-establishment speech. So in this case, Trump is pushing against the establishment. The establishment is cracking down on him. So, you know, a lot of liberals see that and they're like, oh, this is great. But the thing you have to understand is like, yeah, right now it's Trump, but tomorrow it could be you. If you start pushing back against the establishment and we've created this precedent where the establishment can silence people, well, now you just put yourself in a position to be silenced. So there's no consistency in the views here. It's not about political views here. It's not about being in one side or the other. It's, do you support free speech? Do you not? There's a very clear, definitive line between those two things. And I think this is a turning point for liberalism in America. Liberalism's already kind of dead in America. It's dead in America. We don't have a true left. And this is proving it because all the liberals are cheering for this. And people's whole approach to politics, like I said in the last video, is becoming more and more ahistorical. They're completely forgetting all of history, all the precedents set. Everything we used to understand is going out the window, meaning we're going to repeat everything we did before. So, you know, anyways, Trump should not be banned on any of these platforms. Yeah, sure, maybe some tweets should be deleted here and there, but to give this much power, that's the other thing, to give this much power to these private technology companies, these massive corporations, some of the biggest corporations in human history, we're giving them the power to determine who speaks and who doesn't speak. That should absolutely frighten you. And I think the strange thing too is like I hear a lot of liberals making the argument like, oh, well, because it's a private company, they, you know, who cares if they censor the private company? They have the right to do that. And it's kind of like the first thing I thought of when people were saying that is like, well, what was your reaction to those liberals? What was your reaction when the NFL, you know, started basically censoring players for kneeling? You know, they're a private company, but all the liberals were up in arms, as they should be, because those guys are protesting a very real issue. Police brutality against Black people has been persisting since America was founded. And that was a very, you know, righteous protest, but the NFL shut it down because they're a private company. Is that justified? Absolutely not. But now all of a sudden it is, just because Facebook is banning, you know, Orange Man, who you don't like. Well, that's not how it works. You don't get to pick and choose. So once again, two positions you can have on free speech. Noam Chomsky gets this. And Yeah. Hope everyone has a good rest of their day.